They thought I was sleeping. That was the only reason I heard it. My name is Evelyn Harper, 78 years old, widow, mother, the woman in the spare room. And tonight I realized I'm no longer family. I'm a responsibility they're trying to check off a list. Through the narrow slit of my bedroom door, her voice slipped into the hallway, soft, efficient, like she was talking about dry cleaning instead of my life. Tomorrow we'll get her signed in, quietly. No shame, no guilt, just another task. She didn't say my name, but she didn't need to. I knew who her was. Me. The one they promised to take care of. The one they were now planning to put away. I stayed perfectly still on the edge of the bed, hands pressed flat on my thighs. I didn't clear my throat or shift the mattress. If they knew I'd heard, those whispers might turn into something much harder to escape. My suitcase was already half packed. I'd started filling it after dinner, telling myself it was just in case. Just in case I visited an old friend. Just in case I needed a hospital bag ready. Truth was simpler. The air in this house had changed weeks ago. Deep inside, I'd been bracing for this very moment. 2 months earlier, I'd moved in with my son, Daniel. My little bungalow had become too much after my hip operation. Too many steps. Too many wet leaves. Too much fear of falling alone. Daniel smiled and said, "You'll be safer here, Mom. We'll handle everything." Honey, I wanted to trust him. So I did. I signed everything he asked me to. Sold the home where his father and I raised him. Put the money into an account he arranged for both of us. I didn't ask too many questions. Didn't want to sound suspicious or ungrateful. But dang, love shouldn't feel like a business transaction. I forgot that real love isn't measured in big promises. It's in the small things. How they speak to you when you move slow, whether they refill your teacup or sigh when you ask for bread. Lately, the sighs felt louder than the kindness. I sat alone at dinner tonight. Daniel and his wife Lauren had popped out and left leftovers in a plastic box. I don't mind reheated food, but I minded the way Lauren glanced at her watch when I asked, "How was your day?" Like even a few seconds with me were borrowed time. When I washed my cup and retreated to my room, I left the door cracked open in case their cat wanted to sneak in like she used to. Funny how animals notice when love leaves a room. Keys jingled. Laughter floated up the stairs. Then Lauren's whisper again. "She's getting slower." And she brought up the house money again. We should finalize the care home paperwork tomorrow. It'll be easier if we do it before she starts resisting. I waited. Come on, Danny. Say something. Some defense. Some memory that I'm not luggage. But all I heard was the mattress creak as he sat. No words. No hesitation. Nothing. Wow. That silence hurt more than any sentence could. I stayed sitting in the dark long after. Not shocked, just defeated. Like a truth I'd known was finally speaking up. There it is. Finally, I stood, closed my door, turned the lock, pulled the suitcase fully into the light. I folded my old navy cardigan, the one Daniel said made me look frail, and placed it neatly on top. Then I paused, fingers brushing something tucked in the side pocket. A worn vinyl record. Can't Help Falling in Love. The song my late husband and I used to dance to in the kitchen after long days. I held it against my chest for a moment, packing the last piece of a life where I mattered. The important things went next. Passport, medical file, password notebook, and that plain manila folder I wasn't supposed to find in Daniel's desk drawer last week, the one marked with my name. The clock glowed 12:41 a.m. I didn't know where I was going, only that if I stayed, tomorrow wouldn't belong to me. As I zipped the suitcase shut, one question echoed louder than the fear. If this is what they whisper outside my door now, how long have they been planning it behind the locked ones? I thought walking out in the middle of the night would be the hardest part, but I hadn't yet opened that folder with my name on it. The house was too quiet as I slipped into the hallway, suitcase rolling softly behind me. No night lights, just faint blue from the street lamps pressing through the blinds. My room was at the far end of the corridor, which meant every step toward the front door felt like crossing a stage I wasn't supposed to be on. I carried my shoes in my hand, toes curling against the cool wood floor. It felt like the house was watching me leave. A place that once felt safe, now felt like a stranger. At the front door, I hesitated. My fingers rested on the handle. Part of me wanted to knock on their bedroom door like I did when Daniel had nightmares as a boy and whisper, "Honey, I'm here." But tonight the nightmare was mine, and they were the ones who created it. Wow, how did we get here? I stepped outside. No note. What could I write? "Thanks for the hospitality. I'll get out of your way." The neighborhood looked as picture perfect as the postcards they sent me on holidays before I sold my home. Neat lawns, quiet driveways, empty hearts. I looked back once, just long enough to realize the porch light didn't come on. Not for me. The bus stop was just a few blocks away. I walked barefoot, shoes still in my hand, the night air pressing around me like it wanted to push me back inside that house and convince me I was overreacting. But I wasn't. A motion sensor light snapped on as I passed a garden, catching me like a thief. Shoot. I froze, then kept moving. The bench at the stop was cold, metal grooves pressing into my skin. The bus wasn't due for a few minutes, so I opened the folder. The first paper made my stomach twist, a general power of attorney. My signature looked right at a quick glance, but the slant, the pressure, that was Lauren's handwriting. I knew it. I'd seen my signature forged on birthday cards from all of us too many times to ignore now. My hands shook. The second paper was worse, a list of bank transactions. The money from my bungalow, gone. Not for my medical care, not for a better life. No calls to ask if I needed anything, no new wheelchair ramp, no daily visits, just withdrawals without a voice attached. Dang, Danny, you took everything. The third document broke something inside me, a draft admission form for a care facility, and underlined, "Patient shows early signs of confusion and cognitive decline." Maybe nobody actually sees you fade. They just decide you're already gone. Headlights appeared, washing over the folder. I shoved everything inside as the doors hissed open. The driver, a man with tired eyes and a name badge that read Bill, looked me over. "Kinda late to be wandering alone, ain't it?" "Just heading into town," I murmured, "near the old library, if it's still there." He chuckled. "Still there, though it sure ain't what it used to be." Neither was I. The ride was quiet. Streetlights smeared across the windows, turning my reflection into a ghost I almost didn't recognize. The same woman who once rushed a sick little boy to the clinic now sat forgotten on a bus, because that boy grew up and forgot who rushed. Somewhere in the hum of the engine, I found myself whispering the melody my husband used to hum on long drives. Wise men say. I stopped before the words cracked me open. 20 minutes later, I stepped into a town I barely recognized. Glass towers where bakeries once stood. Progress, they call it. The motor lodge near the gas station still stood, though, a stubborn relic, like me. One night, I told the woman at the desk. The room smelled like detergent and a little sadness. I locked the door, set the suitcase down, finally let my spine release its tension. No calls, no texts, no, where are you? Wow, even my disappearance was convenient for them. I wasn't mom anymore. I was paperwork. I thought the folder had shown me the worst of their betrayal, until morning came, and I realized someone else had signed those documents too. Someone I trusted even more than my son. I barely slept. The motel fridge hummed like it was arguing with itself all night, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw my name forged in ink that didn't belong to my hand. By dawn, I stopped trying. I boiled water in the dented kettle, made weak tea in a paper cup, and watched morning light leak through the curtains, soft and honest. Silence here wasn't punishment. It was just quiet. I showered, dressed, and slipped the folder into my bag. At 8 o'clock on the dot, I called a taxi. Downtown branch of Fairway Bank, I said, please. I hadn't stepped into this bank alone since before my husband passed. I could still see him, suit jacket a little too big, humming while filling out forms, saying, "We'll always take care of each other, Ev." Ah, promises meant something back then. Inside, everything gleamed, polished floors, glass offices, and a bright-smiled receptionist named Maya. "Good morning. How can we help?" "I need to speak with a manager," I said. "It's about power of attorney and activity on my accounts." A flicker of concern met her eyes. One moment. Soon I was sitting across from Thomas, sharp suit, tight tie, polite but not patronizing, a rare combination. I set the folder between us like a confession. No small talk. "I'd like to know how much of this is legal," I said, "and how much is theft." He flipped through the documents slowly. Forged power of attorney. Transfers draining the money from my bungalow. A care home application stamped with lies. "Mrs. Harper," he said, voice firm now, "this is fraud. It appears you've been financially exploited." "Wow," I whispered. Not shock, confirmation. He looked me straight in the eyes. "What would you like us to do?" I took a breath, steadier than I felt. "I want the power of attorney revoked today. Remove Daniel's access. Freeze anything with my name. And start a new account. Just me. No one else gets a key." "Yes, ma'am," he said. Not, "Are you sure?" Not, "Maybe discuss this with your family." Just action. For over an hour, we dissected every line. Charges labeled home repairs I'd never seen. Medical expenses to doctors I'd never met. Temporary transfers into an investment that only benefited Daniel. Dang, he spent my future like pocket change. When my hand cramped from signing revocations, Thomas slid a card toward me. "Her name is Amelia Clark," he said. "She's a lawyer who deals with elder financial abuse. I think you deserve someone on your side." "I'm not ready to drag my son through court," I murmured. "You don't have to," he assured me. "But you do need protection. A voice that fights for you." I tucked the card into my bag. By the time I stepped outside, sunlight warmed my face. My legs ached, but I felt taller. like someone had lifted invisible weight off my shoulders. I didn't know where I'd stay tomorrow. My life was a question mark. But I held the pen now. For the first time in a long time, I belonged to myself. I thought freezing the accounts would end the nightmare. But as I sat on a park bench clutching that folder, I realized there's still one person who needs to hear what really happened. Someone who once promised to protect me and wrote his promises in ink that never fades. There was a small park across from the bank, nothing special, just a few trees, a playground, and a line of benches. I found an empty one and sat, setting my suitcase beside me like a tired companion. People rushed past, suits with coffee cups, parents tugging kids, students lost in their headphones. Nobody stared at the old woman with a suitcase, and for once, being invisible felt like freedom. My phone buzzed. I already knew the names I'd see. Daniel. I let it ring. It rang again. Then came the message. Mom, where are you? Call me. We're worried. He used to call me Mama when he scraped his knees. Now it was just logistics. Another text arrived, this one from Lauren. We woke up and your room was empty. This is really unfair. You're upsetting everyone. Please contact us so we can fix this. Fix what? The missing mother or the missing money? They still couldn't say the right thing. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, then froze a moment. What if they traced the bank alerts? What if Daniel stormed into the hotel next? My heart kicked at my ribs like it wanted out. Not today. Not ever again. I pulled out the lawyer's card and dialed. She picked up by the third ring. Calm voice, no rush. Ms. Clark speaking. Good morning. My name is Evelyn Harper. Thomas at Fairway Bank gave me your number. He said you help people like me. A small pause, the kind that feels like respect. All right, Mrs. Harper, she said. Can you come in today? 2 hours later, I sat in a warm office lined with books and soft lighting. Amelia was younger than I expected, early 40s, but her eyes held something steady, like she'd seen heartbreak before and wasn't scared of it. She went through the documents carefully, forged power of attorney, missing funds, the care home form stamped with lies. Her jaw hardened slightly, and I felt strangely protected by that anger. When she closed the folder, she looked straight at me. First, she said, I'm sorry this happened to you. Second, you didn't cause this. Honey, it sure feels like I did, I whispered. Trusting the wrong person can feel like your own crime. Older adults don't lose control, she corrected gently. Others take it. Love gets weaponized, and that's on them, not you. I didn't know I was holding my breath until that moment. What do we do next? I asked. We protect everything, she said. Your accounts, your will, your medical rights. We rebuild your power on paper, and we document the exploitation so no one gets away with rewriting your life. I can't drag my son into court, I murmured. You don't have to, she replied softly. Today isn't about punishment. Today is about you. She took out a legal pad. If one day you needed someone to decide things for you, someone who actually loves you, who would that be? My mind didn't go to Daniel. It didn't even pause on him. It went straight to my niece, Carla. When I had my hip surgery, Carla brought soup and fuzzy socks. She didn't ask how much money I had. She asked what my favorite tea was. Carla, I said. She listens. And when she says no, it's gentle. Perfect, Amelia smiled. We'll make her your durable power of attorney with strict conditions. Nothing moves without your signature unless you truly can't sign. She drafted papers while explaining each line. No rushing, no sighing, no treating me like an inconvenience. When we finished, she slid a new, thicker folder toward me. You see these documents, she said? You chose them. You understood them. You signed them. Wow, what a difference that makes. By the time I stepped outside, the sky had turned a soft silver. My legs hurt, but I stood straighter, like someone tightened the bolts in my spine. I didn't know where I'd sleep long term, but the motel wasn't my only option anymore. Thomas had scribbled something on the back of his card. Elder support services, not police, not family. People who stand beside you while you figure out the rest. Maybe it was time I finally stood somewhere that felt like mine. I tucked the folder under my arm like a shield I'd earned. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of what tomorrow might ask of me. I thought lawyers and bankers were the only allies I needed. But the next woman I called didn't see me as a case number. She spoke like someone who already believed I had a future worth planning. And that was the scariest kind of hope. The number on the back of Thomas's card led to a place called Harbor Line Elder Services. The woman who answered sounded like she'd already made room for me in her day. This is Patrice, she said. How can we help? My name is Evelyn Harper, I replied. I left my son's house. There was financial control. My lawyer is helping with that. I just don't want to go back to where I started. I understand, she said, and I believed she did. Can you come in tomorrow morning? The next day, I found myself standing between a church and a supermarket, not exactly a beacon of hope. But inside, the space smelled like coffee and photocopy paper, and somehow, possibility. Patrice was in her 50s, streaks of silver hair pulled back, eyes that didn't look away when things got uncomfortable. You're not here for therapy, are you? She asked once we sat. No, I said honestly. I've cried enough in other rooms. I want structure, protection, options. Good, she nodded. That's what we build. She asked practical questions, where I was staying, whether I felt safe, if I had anyone I trusted. No judgment, no sighs, no impatience. Then she picked up the phone and dialed an extension. Ruth, I've got someone you need to meet. Elder financial exploitation, left home on her own terms, revoked POA already. Yes, she's one of the strong ones. Strong. Wow. A long time since anyone called me that. Ruth arrived minutes later. Glasses, sensible shoes, a presence like a well-built fence. Patrice says you already did the hardest part, she said. You left. It didn't feel brave, I admitted. More like sneaking out of my own life. That's exactly how bravery feels, she replied. You only realize later that it was courage. She skimmed through Amelia's documents, nodding with approval. You have a good lawyer, she said. Now we add layers, housing, support, making sure your son and his wife can't corner you legally or emotionally. My phone buzzed again in my bag, Daniel's name flashing like a warning light. What if he was already calling the bank, the motel, the police? Sigh. I let it ring. I wouldn't let guilt drag me back. Can they pull me into court? I asked quietly. They can try, Ruth said. but forged signatures fall apart when someone shines a light on them. And if they send threats or manipulation, you bring everything to us or to Amelia. You do not respond alone. Relief didn't come like a flood, just a gentle loosening, like undoing a too tight button. Patrice slid a pamphlet toward me. Transitional housing for older adults who had to leave unsafe situations. Short term, very low cost, support built in, only if you want it. Part of me wanted to refuse. Pride is stubborn. But another part remembered Daniel's voice saying I was in the way. I was never a burden. I was the woman who wiped his tears and cheered at every school play. Funny how the child forgets who made them brave. I'm in a bed and breakfast for now, I said. An old friend might take me in later, but I don't want to be someone's problem forever. Then we'll aim for independence, Ruth said. Not survival, stability. She wrote a name and number on a sticky note. Lena, housing. I slipped it into my folder next to Amelia's card. This folder wasn't fear anymore. It was a shield I had built myself. That evening, the motel room felt less like exile and more like transition. The borrowed quilt on the bed reminded me of one I'd stitched years ago, a blue patch in the corner still crooked because little Daniel kept tugging the thread, giggling. Memories are funny. They don't leave when people do. Morning came. I dialed Lena. Funny timing, she said. A unit just opened. Ground floor, no stairs, quiet. You'd qualify. What's the catch? I asked, still learning not to flinch at kindness. No catch. You get 6 months. Your own key, your own kitchen, your own life. We just check in weekly to support, not supervise. I looked around my little rented room, the suitcase like a loyal dog by the door. I was tired of living packed. I'd like to see it, I said. I thought that little apartment would be just a shelter, but I didn't know it would become the first place in years where every drawer and every decision finally belonged to me. The apartment didn't look like much from the outside, a low brick building with peeling paint and a row of mailboxes that leaned a little to the left. The kind of place people drive past without noticing. But when Lena opened the door to Unit 3B, something caught in my chest, sharp, hopeful. It was small, a narrow kitchen with a single strip of counter, a living room just big enough for a sofa and a lonely chair, a bedroom that would barely fit a dresser alongside a bed. The carpet was worn thin near the doorway. The windows were sticky and needed a bit of muscle to open, but it was quiet and empty and mine. If you want it, Lena said, you can move in starting tomorrow. Utilities included until your situation stabilizes. We can help with meals, transport, but no one will enter without your permission. Not staff, not family. No inspections? I asked, half holding my breath. Only if you invite us for tea, she smiled. A tiny laugh escaped me. That felt strange. Free. It was the first laugh I'd owned in months. I turned slowly, touching the walls lightly with my fingertips. Plain walls, but I could choose the pictures. A small bathroom, but I could set the towels how I wanted. A front door, and I held the decision to lock it or leave it open. My husband and I once painted our first apartment sunflower yellow. We argued the whole day about whether the color was too bright, then danced barefoot under those walls when we realized the fighting meant we cared. Wow, that feels like a different lifetime. I'll take it, I said, the words landing softly but firmly. The next morning, I arrived with my suitcase in one hand and my folder in the other. Everything I owned, all the proof I existed, tucked into such small spaces. Yet somehow it felt like too much and too little all at once. Lena stopped by with a stack of fresh towels and two mismatched mugs. "Welcome home," she said simply. Home. That word hit deep. I sat at the tiny kitchen table and opened the folder, this time not in fear. I wanted to feel what changing my life looked like in ink. New bank account in my name alone. New power of attorney naming Carla. Medical directive signed. No one could hide me away again. A new will that didn't include Daniel or Lauren. Amelia had called earlier. "Everything is filed, Mrs. Harper. Legally, you have full control now." For a moment, I didn't speak. I just breathed, like a bird who realized the cage door was left open. My phone buzzed, rattling against the table. Daniel, then Lauren, then an unknown number. Their texts flashed like alarms. "You can't just disappear like this. Answer or we call the authorities." "This isn't right. You're being dramatic, Mom. Come home. Now." Not one, "Are you safe?" Just fear of losing control. They still didn't get it. Then I saw another message further down. "Grandma, it's Leo. Are you okay? I'm worried. Please text me." My grandson, the one who used to show me his school drawings, the one who disappeared into being too busy. I set the phone face down. I would respond when I chose to, not when guilt demanded it. The next day, I walked the block, just exploring. That's how I found the library. A faded brick building with a crooked open sign and a ramp railing brushed with fresh paint like someone cared enough to keep it standing. Inside, it smelled like paper and dust and lemon polish. Comfort, memories, possibility. A woman behind the desk looked me over, kindly, curiously. "You look like someone who's either lost or thinking very hard," she said. "Mostly thinking," I replied, "but I might get lost later." She chuckled. "Name's Judith. If you like quiet and stories, you're in the right place." I only meant to peek inside. I stayed nearly an hour, wandering the large print shelves, running my fingers along titles I used to promise myself I'd read someday. On my way out, Judith called, "We're short on Tuesday volunteers. If you get tired of thinking alone, come back." Back in my apartment, I made tea in one of the mismatched mugs. The quiet didn't feel empty. It felt like space. Space to breathe. Space to choose. Space to remember that I was a full person long before someone tried to reduce me to paperwork. I thought the library would just be a place to pass time. I didn't expect it to become the room where my past would walk back in, wearing my grandson's too big jacket and carrying an apology he didn't know how to give. Before Leo ever found me, someone else did. Not in person, on paper. The letter arrived 2 weeks after I moved into Unit 3B. Thick envelope, heavy paper. My name written in looping script I knew too well, the kind that always looked performative. Lauren. I stood at the mailboxes for a moment, heart thudding, before I slipped it between my fingers and carried it upstairs. I set it on the tiny kitchen table like a snake I wasn't sure was dead. Sigh, I whispered to myself. It still amazed me how much damage paper could hold. Yesterday at the library, I'd mentioned it to Judith. Oh, yes, she'd said, eyes narrowing behind her glasses. That daughter-in-law seems like the type who uses stationery as a stage. She wasn't wrong. I slid a butter knife under the flap and unfolded the letter. Evelyn, I hope you're safe and comfortable wherever you are. We have all been extremely worried. The phrases ran like warm syrup poured over cold accusations. We did everything out of love. You didn't seem able or willing to handle things. This is not what anyone wanted. Families don't run away from each other when things get hard. Wow, not one mention of forged signatures, not one word about stealing from me. Just guilt dressed up as concern. They weren't upset that they betrayed me. They were upset that I left their control. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from recognition. Ah, there it was again, that script they expected me to follow. I folded the letter neatly, slid it back in the envelope, and placed it on the counter, like a museum exhibit for a life I had survived. Later that evening, I called Nora, my oldest friend, the one who knew the first version of me, before wife, before mother, before paperwork. When she answered, her voice crackled like a familiar old song. Evie Harper, she said, it's about damn time. I read her the letter, every manipulative line, every lie wrapped in polite punctuation. She didn't gasp or act shocked. She just kept saying, unbelievable, in different tones of outrage. Then, burn it, she suggested. Tempting, I chuckled, but I think I'll just let it sit, like I did, for years. Nora exhaled sharply. Oh, honey, they didn't just cross a line. They packed a picnic, pitched a tent, and built a patio on the wrong side of it. I laughed, a big, sudden laugh that surprised us both. It felt good to hear someone defend me without conditions. Nora and I met when our sons were in kindergarten. She used to sneak candy into my purse during school events. We survived messy divorces, bad perms, and teenage tantrums side by side. She held my hand at my husband's funeral when Daniel arrived late. And I hadn't called her in over a decade. Life stretches distance like taffy, thin but never broken. When she invited me to stay with her, I didn't hesitate this time. I packed a small bag, not the suitcase, just clothes and comfort. I locked the apartment carefully, my new house key warm in my fist. My phone buzzed again. Mom, you're making dangerous decisions. We will have to notify authorities if you don't respond. This isn't you. Someone is manipulating you. Please cooperate so we can fix this. Fix what? My freedom? I muttered. There it is, the fear of losing access. I turned the phone face down in my pocket and boarded the evening bus. Nora was waiting at the coastal station, leaning on a cane, but eyes bright enough to light the ocean. You're thinner, she said instead of hello. Then, narrowing her gaze, and you're carrying yourself like you're guilty. We'll fix that. Her home smelled like warmth, garlic, sea air, and something simmering. I sat at her kitchen table, that same wooden table where we once cracked crab shells and joked about running away to Italy. Over soup and strong tea, I told her everything. The whispers, the papers, the escape, the lawyer, the apartment. She listened without flinching. When I finished, she slapped the table, gently, but with conviction. They didn't just try to erase you, Evie. They tried to forge a new story without asking whether the main character was still alive. Wow, no one had said it that plainly before. You're staying as long as you want, she declared. And when you go back to that little flat, you'll walk in like a woman who survived the fire, not like she's the one who lit it. Something inside me loosened, a guilt I didn't know I'd been feeding. I leaned back and exhaled. This was what relief tasted like: salt and soup and truth. I thought Nora's kitchen would be where I shattered. Instead, it became the place where I learned to stop apologizing for surviving, and where my phone started buzzing with a different kind of message, from someone young enough to change the story, and brave enough to say he was sorry. Nora's house was small and cluttered. Mismatched dishes stacked on open shelves, old photographs tucked around every corner. A crack in the kitchen window let the sea breeze and the sound of waves creep in each night. I slept beneath a faded green quilt in her spare room. In the morning, I didn't wake to a whisper outside my door. I woke to gulls complaining and Nora banging pots like she was auditioning for a marching band. "Tea or coffee?" she yelled toward the hallway. "Tea," I called back, "strong enough to scare common sense out of me." My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I stared at it for a moment, like it had teeth, before flipping it over. 23 missed calls. Most from Daniel, some from Lauren, 3 from unfamiliar numbers, and 1 from Leo. My heart paused, then kicked. I opened his message. "Grandma, it's Leo. Mom says you needed space, but I don't believe that. Are you safe?" I pressed the phone against my chest for a second. Just honesty, concern, no script. A memory flickered. Leo at 5 years old, sitting on my kitchen counter, dipping his fingers in cookie dough, whispering, "Don't tell Mom, it's our secret sweetness." He used to trust me with his little rebellions. In the kitchen, Nora slid a steaming mug toward me and raised one eyebrow. "That your ghosts again?" "Multiple ghosts," I sighed, "and one living boy." "You don't owe the ghosts a damn thing," she said, stirring her oatmeal like she was picking a fight with it. "The boy, that's a choice." I didn't answer. Instead, we spent the day cleaning her cupboards, me climbing stools, her instructing. We laughed about scandals from our 20s and cursed the songs our husbands once sang loudly and off-key. Every few hours, the phone buzzed again. "Mom, you're being unreasonable. This is getting dangerous. You can't do this alone. We'll have no choice but to request a capacity evaluation if you don't respond. This isn't you." Wow. Threats wrapped in worry. Manipulation wearing a mask of safety. Not once, "I'm sorry." Not once, "We were wrong." That night, I shut the phone off. I slept better than I had in decades. When I returned to my apartment days later, a thick envelope sat in my mailbox. A law firm logo in the corner. "Oh, for heaven's sake," I muttered. In the kitchen, I opened it. Mediation requests. Talk of shared decision-making. Concern about the emotional distress caused to dependents. A bolded suggestion that if I didn't comply within 14 days, they might seek a formal capacity hearing. I felt nothing drop inside me this time. No panic, no shaking hands, just tired. Tired of their performances. I took the letter straight to Ruth. She skimmed, snorted, rolled her eyes. "This is a shove, not a summons," she said. "They're rattling the cage you already climbed out of." "Could they actually take away my autonomy?" I asked. Not anymore, she said confidently. The forged signatures alone put them on a cliff's edge. If they push, they fall. We respond only if Amelia decides it's worth a swat. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel threatened by paperwork with my name on it. I felt powerful. I'm not sitting in a room with them pretending I misunderstood my own life, I said. Then you won't, Ruth replied. Simple, firm. That evening in my little living room, I turned my phone back on. A new message appeared from Leo. Grandma, I know things are bad. I'm not asking you to come back. I just want to know you're okay. That was it. No guilt, no agenda, just the truth. My fingers hovered over the screen. I felt something warm crack open in my chest. Hope, maybe. I typed, I'm safe. I have my own place. I'm getting help from good people. I can't talk about your parents right now, but I'd like to see you, if you can come as yourself, not as their messenger. His response came fast enough to make me laugh. Tell me where. I'll be there. Wow, that boy still has some rebel left in him. I thought seeing Leo again would rip open every wound. But when he walked into the library where I'd started volunteering, I saw fire, not fear, in his eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't the only one in this family quietly fighting for the truth. By then, Tuesdays at the library had become a new kind of comfort, a ritual. I shelved large print mysteries, straightened chairs for the reading group, and traded jokes with Judith about the chronic late returners. You're better than half the students I get, she told me one morning. At least you put things where they belong. I smiled softly. I've had enough of being misplaced myself. On a gray Wednesday afternoon, I was behind the desk sorting returns when the front door groaned open. A breath of cold air swept in, and someone stepped through it. I looked up. My heart stopped. Leo. His shoulders were hunched inside a too-thin jacket, his hair longer than I remembered, still unruly, like when he refused haircuts at 9. He looked older, yes, but those eyes, warm brown, the same as when he cried over his dead goldfish and asked me if heaven had fish bowls. Judith followed my stunned gaze. Friend of yours? She whispered. My grandson, I breathed. The one I haven't seen in 2 years. She leaned in. Want me to tell him we're closed? No, my voice barely made it out. That's what his parents do. I want to see which version of him came. He spotted me, took a breath, then walked toward me, slow, like I might vanish if he blinked. Hi, Grandma, he said. His voice, deeper now, cracked just slightly. Hi, Leo. I felt a tremor of joy and fear run up my spine. We stood there just looking, so much unsaid hanging in the quiet air like dust motes. Do your parents know you're here? I asked gently. No, he swallowed. And if you tell them, that's okay. But I didn't come for them. Relief fluttered somewhere under my ribs. Good. Sit. We took 2 armchairs by the big front window, the ones I always imagined grandparents used to read stories aloud. Outside, the sky sagged low. Inside, books whispered their soft paper comfort. Leo stared at his hands a moment before speaking. I'm not here to defend them, he said quietly. I don't even know everything they did. I know enough to know it wasn't right. My breath caught, a tiny, almost sob. I waited. They kept saying you were confused, that you couldn't handle things anymore. But I saw your face at dinner. He looked up. eyes shining. You didn't look confused. You looked trapped. That word hit like a truth finally spoken aloud. I should have checked on you, he said. I should have asked what you wanted. I reached out instinctively, then paused, letting him guide the moment. Leo, I said softly, you were a child in their house, their rules, their story. It wasn't your job to save me. His lip trembled, just once. You sent me a puzzle for my birthday last year, he said. The lighthouse one. I nodded. He continued. Mom rolled her eyes, said, what's the point of this old-fashioned gift? But I kept it on my desk. I never texted to say thank you. I'm sorry. A tear slipped down my cheek, warm and relieved, not broken. That puzzle was my way of saying I remembered you, I whispered. He blinked fast, like he didn't want me to see his tears too. I'm not asking you to talk to them, he said. I'm not asking you to forgive them. I wanted to see you with my own eyes, not through what they say, not through their rules. His words felt like sunlight cracking open a locked window. I reached across the table, slowly, and laid my hand over his. His fingers tightened around mine. You don't have to choose between us, I told him. You just have to choose what kind of man you want to be when you're their age. He nodded, a small, determined nod, and in that moment, I saw it. His rebellion, his courage, his heart choosing truth. I'm trying, he whispered. I believe you, I said, and I meant it. After a long while, he stood. Can I come again? A hopeful tremor in his voice. Yes, I smiled, as long as you come as Leo, not as anyone's messenger. He turned to leave, then hesitated, looked back. You look happier, he said, more like you. Ah, that line almost undid me. I feel more like me, I said. That's what happens when no one rearranges your life while you sleep. His smile was sad and proud all at once. Then he walked out the door. I stayed there, hands folded in my lap, letting the moment settle like warm tea in my veins. For the first time since I left Daniel's house, forgiveness stirred. Not for them, but for me. I thought Leo's visit would be the emotional peak of this story. But back home, a new envelope waited on my table, this one with a different law firm logo. Because villains don't always show up shouting. Sometimes they wear polite stationery while sharpening knives under the desk. The envelope from Sullivan and Crane, LLP, arrived on a Thursday afternoon, thick, official, and too sure of itself. My name printed in crisp black letters as if the paper already owned me. I set it on the kitchen table, made tea, washed my one cup. Once upon a time, the sight of legal stationery would have sent dread spiraling through my stomach. But now, annoyance, mildly salted with boredom. Finally, I slid a butter knife under the flap and opened it. Dear Mrs. Harper, we represent your son, emotional impact, shared financial accounts. The wording was cold but familiar, the same old performance in a new suit. Halfway down the page, to protect their interests. There it was, the real truth. Not a single line about forged signatures, not a mention of bank transfers I never approved, not one shred of remorse for signing me away to a care facility like I was luggage. Just polished concern about how my freedom inconvenienced their plans. I folded the letter once, then again, softly, carefully, like a lie I'd grown tired of engaging with. I placed it into my folder, the one that had been born of fear, but now felt like armor. Then I picked up the phone and called Amelia. She had me in her office the same afternoon, her reading glasses perched low as she scanned the letter, once, then twice. They want to drag you back into their narrative, she said, a place where they're in control and you're the one apologizing. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Can they actually take me to court? I asked. She folded the paper and met my eyes, steady as an oak. Anyone can file paperwork, she said, but we have proof. They have excuses. If they push this, everything they did becomes part of the record. People like your son rarely want their private manipulation held up to the light. Her voice softened. You did something most people never do, Evelyn. You stood up before they pushed you off the edge. That takes strength most don't find until it's too late. Wow. Someone seeing me, really seeing me, still felt new. So, what's our move? I asked. Amelia slid a single-page statement toward me, simple and dignified. A declaration that I was living independently, I was lucid and in control of my decisions. Any further interference would be treated as harassment. No fear, no apology. I signed my name with a steady hand, the real version of my signature, not the blurred imitation they had scribbled behind my back. On the way home, I stopped by the bakery and bought a pastry, a flaky little thing with custard in the center. No occasion, just desire, just because I mattered. Back in my apartment, I made tea and watched streetlights flicker on like a quiet celebration of ordinary life. My phone buzzed. Daniel. Mom, please, we can fix this if you just talk to us. I stared for a long moment, not with panic, not with guilt, with clarity. Delete. Talking hadn't been the problem. Listening had. I looked toward the puzzle Leo had given me, the one with the lighthouse, and smiled. That boy had a little beacon of his own now, and I wasn't drifting in the dark anymore. With lawyers answered, accounts secured, and my door locked on my terms, you'd think the story was done. But surviving isn't the same thing as living, and I hadn't yet discovered what a reclaimed life could hold, especially not the unexpected chapter waiting just around the corner. Life after crisis isn't dramatic. It's quiet, almost suspiciously so at first. The days softened into a gentle rhythm. I woke early, opened the blinds to coax the light into my little living room, and put the kettle on. Sometimes I walked to the library. Sometimes I simply stayed home and watched sunshine crawl across the carpet. For the first time in years, I could decide something without anyone hovering in the doorway, suggesting or sighing. Choice. Such a small word that feels like owning the world. On Tuesdays at the library, I teased Judith while shelving large print mysteries. At least you put things where they belong, she said once, tapping a returned book. I've had enough of being misplaced myself, I replied. She squeezed my shoulder, a small gesture, but one that reminded me I wasn't invisible here. On Thursdays, I read aloud to a handful of older women and one stubborn man who always said he wasn't staying, and then stayed anyway. He pretended he didn't love the stories, but he always asked, "Same time next week?" No one asked where I came from. They just learned my name and used it. That felt like a gift. Lena visited weekly with forms or meeting reminders, always cheerful, always careful not to pry. When you're ready to look at longer-term housing, we'll talk, she said one afternoon. Until then, every inch of this is yours. I held on to those words, yours. Patrice called occasionally, her voice warm in the quiet. How's the silence treating you? Some days, silence felt like peace. Other days, like a strange new house guest I was still learning how to live with. Leo began dropping by the library, no fanfare, sometimes with a bakery box, sometimes with nothing but his earnest smile. We didn't discuss his parents much. That topic sat between us like a closed book we might open later. He talked about school, the music he was learning, and the lies adults tell when pretending everything is fine. You don't have to turn into them, I told him once. He looked up, serious, soft. I'm trying to turn into someone you wouldn't be ashamed of. My heart cracked and healed in the same moment. I have never been ashamed of you, I said, taking his hand. Not once, not ever. He squeezed back, firmly, like believing me made him stronger. At home, I cooked whatever I felt like eating. Soup with too many carrots, eggs with too much pepper, toast with jam dripping down the side. No comments, no judgment. Some mornings, I heard a stray memory knock at the door. Daniel, sighing when I asked for help cutting vegetables. Lauren rolling her eyes because I walked too slow. That woman they tried to turn me into, I barely recognized her anymore. Irene, who insisted I quit calling her Nora because only my husband got away with that, phoned every few days from her coastal kitchen. What's for dinner, she'd ask. Stew, I'd say, or just toast tonight. I earned lazy. We both did, she'd reply. I'd hear her smile down the line. Sometimes, late at night, I sat at my table with a pen and a notebook. Not legal notes, not trauma records. I wrote my story. The whisper outside a bedroom door. The drawer with the envelope that held a lie. Barefoot steps into a future no one granted me. I claimed it. Most of all, I wrote about the moment a man in a bank looked at me and said, "This is wrong," and believed me. I didn't know if I'd ever show the pages to anyone. Maybe they were just proof that my mind was not slipping, that I was still here, still sharp, still mine. A few evenings each week, walking home from the library, I'd see a woman my age standing on a balcony nearby, hands gripping the railing, eyes glassy with a kind of silent exhaustion. I didn't speak to her, but I always thought, I hope someone tells you it's okay to leave if you need to. Because the bars we see are never the ones that hold us. It's the ones built from guilt, obligation, and fear that keep us trapped. I had broken mine. Maybe I could help someone else break theirs. That's when it hit me. My story wasn't just mine. It belonged to every older woman who'd ever been treated like furniture to be moved. And the only question left was, would I stay silent or turn my survival into a message loud enough for others to hear? It happened on an ordinary afternoon. Rain tapped against the library windows, and attendance at the reading group was low. Judith handed me a flyer. Community talk next month, she said. Elder rights, advocacy. They're looking for someone who's lived it, not just read about it. Interested? Old me would have folded the paper and tucked it away. New me let the silence stretch just a little. I'll think about it, I said, and meant it. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the flyer on one side, my notebook on the other. I thought of all the quiet warnings I'd ignored. My favorite mug disappearing, mail arriving already opened, conversations turning into briefings. I thought of women like me who don't have a Thomas or an Amelia or a Patrice or a Ruth or a Lena. Women who are told to be grateful, who believe that needing help means surrendering control. I picked up my pen, and this time I wrote to them. I wrote about a suitcase and a half-packed heart, about a motel fridge humming through the fear, about discovering that freedom can taste like a first cup of tea in your own home. And then, the words I wished someone had said to me: you are not too old to walk away. They are not too powerful to stop you. A week later, I stood at the community center, a small audience, a few older adults, a couple grown children, one teenager who clearly wished he was anywhere else. My hands shook at first. Then I noticed a woman pressing a tissue to her eyes, nodding like she was finally hearing a translation of her own life. The fear slipped away. I didn't say my son's name. I didn't have to. I spoke about patterns, control disguised as care, pressure disguised as help, signatures disguised as love. I talked about banks, about legal rights, about how leaving doesn't always mean packing a bag. Sometimes it just means saying a single word: no. Afterward, 3 women approached me separately and whispered the same confession. I thought I was the only one. You're not, I told each of them. You never were. That evening, I returned to my apartment, my space, my lock on the inside. I opened the window just enough to hear the city breathing. I sat down with tea and finished my story. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, if you recognize the sound of a door locking from the wrong side, if you've ever seen your own signature in someone else's handwriting, listen carefully. You're allowed to leave, even if it's late, especially if it's late. And when you go, don't close the door all the way. Someone good might find their way through that gap. A neighbor, a niece, a social worker, a grandchild finally seeing clearly. If you're hearing yourself in my words, don't sit in that feeling alone. Tell someone, write it down, share your truth, because disappearing quietly is how they win. You're not an account. You're not a burden. You're not a problem to be moved. You are a person, and it's still your life. At Voices of Ordinary People, we share true-to-life stories about love, family, heartbreak, and second chances, told with honesty and emotion. If you believe every life holds a story worth hearing, you're in the right place. Subscribe for more stories that make you feel, remember, and reflect. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that could have been yours. And if this story feels a little too close to home, if it's something you've lived but never could tell, you can share it with us. Your story matters. Let it be heard. Voices of Ordinary People. Ordinary people, extraordinary stories.